The FIA has reportedly inspected Red Bull and Ferrari after Max Verstappen's crash, and now one explosive question is spreading across Formula One. What did officials actually find inside Red Bull's wing? The available source confirms the teams were braced for new inspections, but it does not reveal an illegal device, a failed test, or any official punishment. That means the alarming part may not be a hidden mechanism at all. It may be the reason the FIA wanted a closer look in the first place. Because if the wing behaved differently under pressure than expected, Red Bull could face technical changes, lost performance, and a major fight over legality. But if the checks were routine, the entire scandal falls apart. And the one detail that separates those two possibilities has not been made public yet. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why these inspections matter, you have to separate what was checked from what was actually found. The available source says Red Bull and Ferrari were preparing for new inspections after Max Verstappen's crash. That is important. But it does not say the FIA discovered an illegal mechanism inside Red Bull's wing. It does not describe a hidden device. It does not identify a failed test. And it does not confirm that Red Bull received a penalty, an official warning, or an order to redesign the car. That difference changes everything. Because an inspection is not a conviction. In Formula One, cars are checked constantly. The FIA can examine bodywork, measure movement, study damaged components, and compare what happened on track with what the regulations allow. That process can become more intense after a crash. A damaged car can reveal things that are normally difficult to inspect. Parts may break apart. Internal structures may become visible. And officials may get a clearer look at how a component was built. But seeing more does not automatically mean finding something illegal. Imagine a phone being opened after it breaks. You can finally see the battery, the wiring, and every layer hidden beneath the case. That does not mean the phone was designed to cheat a test. It only means the inside is now easier to examine. The same basic idea applies here. After a crash, the FIA may have access to damaged pieces that reveal more about a wing's construction. That could help officials understand how the part bends, how it carries load, and whether its real behavior matches what the rules are trying to control. But the source does not tell us what the inspection revealed. That missing detail is the center of the story. Because there are several very different possibilities. The FIA may have looked at the wing and found nothing unusual. Officials may have noticed a design detail that was clever, but still legal. They may have decided that the current test needed to become stricter for every team. Or they may have identified something that required further action. The source does not confirm which one happened. So any claim that something alarming was found must remain unproven. Still, the fact that Red Bull and Ferrari were both connected to the inspections matters. It suggests the focus may not have been one isolated team. It may have been a wider technical question. That is a crucial distinction. If several teams are examined under the same process, the FIA may be trying to understand a broader trend across the grid. Not necessarily punish one car. And this is where the word Macarena becomes relevant. The source refers to so-called Macarena inspections. But it does not explain the full technical procedure. The name sounds strange, almost playful. Yet the reason behind it could be serious. A moving inspection process may allow officials to examine how parts behave through different directions and loads, rather than looking at one simple movement. Think of checking a door. Pushing it once tells you whether it moves. Pushing it from several angles tells you whether the hinges, frame, and lock react differently under pressure. A Formula One wing is far more complex, but the basic principle is easy to understand. A component may remain inside the allowed limit during one test, then behave differently when pressure arrives from another direction. That is why regulators sometimes update their methods. Teams develop constantly. The tests must keep developing too. But a new test does not automatically mean the old design was illegal. That point is essential. Formula One teams build cars around the written rules and the official tests. They search for every legal advantage. If the FIA later decides a test no longer captures how a component behaves in real conditions, it may strengthen the procedure. That can force teams to adapt. But adaptation is not always punishment. Sometimes it is simply the sport closing a technical gap before it becomes a larger controversy. And Red Bull would not be alone in facing that pressure. The source also mentions Ferrari. It separately mentions Williams undergoing extra checks. And it refers to wider technical trends involving several leading teams. That broader context suggests the FIA's attention may extend across the grid, not only toward Red Bull. This matters because a dramatic headline can make one team appear isolated. It can suggest officials opened Red Bull's wing and discovered something forbidden. But the source does not support that version. What it supports is more cautious. Inspections were expected. Multiple teams were under technical attention. and the full findings were not provided. That is still significant. Because even without a violation, a stricter inspection can affect performance. A wing is not just a piece of bodywork. It helps control the air around the car. That air creates grip, and grip helps the driver turn faster. The wing may also help direct airflow toward other areas, which means one small design change can affect the entire car. Think of a line of falling dominoes. Move the first piece slightly, and every piece after it lands somewhere different. That is why technical changes are rarely isolated. If Red Bull had to stiffen a wing, alter its internal structure, or reduce movement, the effect could reach beyond one straight or one corner. The car might lose efficiency. The balance might change. The tires might react differently. And the driver could feel less confidence at the limit. But again, the source does not confirm that Red Bull was ordered to make any of those changes. Those are possible consequences only if the inspection led to a technical adjustment. And that is the part we still do not know. The real pressure comes from uncertainty. Red Bull would need to understand whether its design remained fully acceptable. Its rivals would want to know whether the same standard applied to them. And the FIA would need to show that every team was being judged fairly. Because technical enforcement becomes dangerous when the rules feel unclear. If one team believes its design passed every required test, it may argue that no punishment is justified. If a rival believes the same design behaves differently on track, it may demand a stronger test. Both sides can make a reasonable argument. That is why the governing body must be precise. The FIA cannot rule based on how suspicious a wing looks in slow motion. It must measure. It must define the allowed movement. It must apply the same procedure consistently. And it must explain what changes, if anything, are required. Without that clarity, every inspection creates more rumors. One team sees regulation. Another sees politics. Fans see conspiracy. And the truth becomes harder to find. That may be the most alarming part of this story. Not a hidden object inside the wing. The possibility that the public has been given a dramatic conclusion before the technical facts are known. Because the title suggests discovery. The source describes inspection. Those are not the same thing. Discovery means something specific was found. Inspection means officials looked. And until the FIA confirms what happened next, the gap between those two words remains enormous. But here is why the story still deserves attention. If the FIA introduced a more demanding way to examine wing movement, teams may have to reconsider designs that previously passed. That could change the competitive order. A small loss of aerodynamic efficiency can have a much larger effect over an entire lap. And if one team depended more heavily on that behavior than another, the consequences would not be equal. That is why Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams, and every other team would watch the process closely. Not because guilt has been proven. Because technical interpretation can decide who keeps an advantage and who loses it. And Verstappen's crash may have created the perfect opportunity for officials to look more closely. A damaged component can expose its internal construction. It can show where the structure is strong, where it is flexible, and how the design was intended to react under force. That does not mean the FIA found a secret device, but it may have given inspectors information they did not have before. And this is where the unanswered question becomes impossible to ignore. Did the damaged wing simply confirm that Red Bull's design was legal? Or did it show behavior the existing tests were not fully capturing? The source does not reveal the answer. But that answer would decide whether this was routine scrutiny, a regulatory warning, or the beginning of a much larger technical fight. Because if nothing unusual was found, the scandal disappears. If the design was clever but legal, Red Bull may have exposed a weakness in the rules rather than broken them. But if the FIA found a structure that behaved outside the intended limits, then the consequences could reach far beyond one inspection. And until officials explain what they saw, every dramatic claim remains one step ahead of the evidence. And this is where the inspection stops being only about Red Bull's wing. Because the moment the FIA changes how a component is tested, every team has to ask the same question. How much of our performance depends on behavior the old test did not fully capture? That question can shake an entire grid. A wing does not need to contain a secret motor, a hidden switch, or an illegal device to create controversy. Sometimes the real advantage comes from how the structure bends, where it bends, when it bends, and whether that movement helps the car become faster at the exact moment the official test is no longer watching. But the source does not confirm that Red Bull used such a system. It does not describe any internal mechanism. It does not provide an FIA finding. And it does not say that Red Bull failed the new inspection. That means the central accusation remains unproven. Still, the technical idea behind the controversy is important. A Formula One wing has two competing jobs. It must create grip in the corners. and it must avoid creating too much resistance on the straights. Those two goals pull in opposite directions. More wing can help the car turn, but more wing can also slow the car down when it is traveling in a straight line. Imagine holding your hand outside a moving car. Keep your palm flat against the air, and the force becomes strong. Turn your hand slightly, and the resistance changes. A Formula One wing uses the same basic principle, only with far greater precision. Now imagine a wing that changes its behavior depending on the force passing over it. At lower speed, it may hold a shape that creates more grip. At higher speed, it may move slightly and reduce resistance. That would be extremely valuable. The car could gain support in the corners, then become more efficient on the straights. But again, valuable does not automatically mean illegal. Everything depends on how the rule is written, how the part is tested, and whether the movement stays inside the permitted limits. That is why the inspection method matters so much. A wing may pass when force is applied in one direction. It may pass when one point is measured. But the FIA may want to know what happens when the load changes direction, when several points are tested together, or when the component is moved through a wider range. That appears to be the concern behind the so-called Macarena inspections mentioned in the source. The name sounds almost ridiculous. The potential consequences are not. Because a more complex inspection can expose behavior that a simpler check might miss. Think of testing a bridge. Pushing down on the center tells you one thing. Applying pressure from the side tells you something else. Adding weight at several points may reveal a weakness that never appeared in the first test. A Formula One wing is not a bridge, but the logic is similar. One test cannot always reveal every way a structure behaves. And teams know this. They design parts to survive the official procedure. They know where the force will be applied. They know what movement will be measured. They know the limit they must stay below. That is not automatically dishonest. It is how engineering works inside a regulated sport. The rules define the challenge. The teams search for the fastest legal answer. But when a component appears to behave differently in real conditions, the FIA may decide that the test needs to evolve. That is where the political fight begins. A team may argue that its design passed every required check. A rival may argue that passing the test is not enough if the part violates the broader intention of the rule. The governing body then has to decide which interpretation matters most: the written procedure, or the behavior the regulation was trying to prevent. That sounds like a minor legal distinction. It can decide championships. Because if the FIA tightens the test, a team may lose an advantage without ever being formally accused of cheating. The design was legal under the old procedure. The new procedure changes what is acceptable going forward. That is very different from discovering an illegal device. But to the public, the two stories can look almost identical. A team is inspected. A test changes. A part is modified. The car becomes slower. People assume guilt. Yet the real situation may be more complicated. The rule may have been unclear. The test may have been incomplete. The team may have found a clever area that the FIA later decided to close. That is not unusual in Formula One. The sport constantly moves between invention and restriction. A team discovers performance. Rivals study it. The FIA evaluates it. Then the boundary changes. The cycle begins again. And this is where Red Bull and Ferrari being mentioned together becomes important. If both teams were bracing for the same inspection, the issue may involve a wider design trend rather than one isolated Red Bull secret. That does not remove the pressure. It changes the nature of it. Instead of asking whether Red Bull alone built something illegal, the better question becomes whether several teams developed wings that pushed the existing test to its limit. That would be a grid-wide technical battle, not a single team scandal. And the source gives us another clue. Williams was also placed under extra scrutiny in a separate report. That suggests the FIA's technical attention may be broad. Different cars, different checks, different possible reasons, but a common message. The governing body is watching closely. That does not prove wrongdoing. It proves that the new generation of cars may be creating new questions. And those questions become especially serious when the rules themselves have changed. A new technical era forces teams to rethink almost everything. The shape of the car, the way airflow is controlled, the balance between straight-line speed and cornering grip.